We were very impressed with the level of engagement of the Chinese government at all levels, in terms of all of government involvement across all of the different arms of government, with tremendous support being poured into Wuhan and Hubei from the central government, with a highly organised emergency management structure.
Okay, are we all going to be okay? That was an official from the World Health Organization talking about Wuhan, obviously. Let's go through the latest numbers. Wuhan has now spread to 20 countries. We have more than 6,100 confirmed cases and 133 deaths. Here in the United States, there are 5 cases confirmed by the CDC, 1 in Arizona, 2 in California, 1 in Washington State, and 1 in Illinois. But have we turned the corner here? All right, got some questions, got some experts with us. We've got Michael Szanto, a foreign policy expert and economist, contributor to the Wall Street Journal, joining us from Florida, and also in the studio with me, Dennis Neal, crisis advisor, NewsMax columnist, and media strategist. Welcome to you both.
Thanks.
I am going to start with Michael in Florida. Do you trust the Chinese, sir? The Chinese, look, it's an authoritarian government. They control the information flow, a lot of it. Are they being, in your opinion, totally upfront? And isn't there the capacity for them to not be totally honest with the world about what's happening in that country?
Well, clearly they have the capacity not to be upfront, but I don't really think that's the issue here. The issue, and we saw this with H1N1 in Mexico, it's the denominator problem. How many healthy patients are we missing? And there's 2 sides to it. Healthy patients mean it might not be quite as deadly or as serious as it seems, because less people might be seriously afflicted percentage-wise, but it also makes it easier for the virus to spread, because the healthy people can carry it around the world. But there is a slight advantage, I hate to say it, to the fact that China is a little bit more authoritarian. It can be a little bit more aggressive sometimes in quarantines and things like that than Western democracies.
Totally. I mean, they shut down essentially 3 cities, 30 million people in and out. A lot of drawbacks living in a communist country, but there is that small upside. Dennis Neal.
Can you imagine the outrage in America today if Donald Trump's government said, we're going to have to quarantine 40 million people? Man, he wouldn't get that done for 10 minutes without going to court. But in China, you can do that kind of thing, and that's got to help, right?
It's got to help, but perhaps it's an overreaction. I mean, 40 million, that is a lot. They are heavy-handed over there. Who knows? Actually, Dennis, I mean, they may or may not be. You think they are cooperating with the information, and there's been no serious concerns raised about them not cooperating. There is the potential, but there is also the possibility that they could overreact. 40 million people on lockdown, that's a lot.
It is a lot. Go ahead. But overall, I just want to say that I think the bigger thing we have to fear right now is the fear of the virus rather than the virus. Can we just put it in perspective?
You think it's no big deal?
Oh, this is 80 deaths, 100 deaths around the world. Do you know how many people died in the U.S. of the flu last year? 35,000. And we're going to worry about a few hundred deaths, maybe? I just think that let's not overdo this. Let's remember that we have the best science ever, the best microbiology that we've ever had to get out in front of this. There's reason to be optimistic. And China's big aggressive reaction, I thought, was a good thing. You talk to people on Wall Street, a bond guy where bonds, that's where you go, you're scared. He said, I think it's a bad thing. I think it means that they're behind the curve, that they've done 40 million. So which way do you want to spin it?
Well, listen, we also have, you mentioned all the authorities doing their job, but we also have a media system that loves to hype things up, and that could be happening here. However, people do get concerned about an epidemic, an outbreak, and the trajectory here. Go ahead, Michael.
Let me just say they should be, because as far as we know, there will come a day, and I'm very hopeful this is not the day, when we are dealing with something serious that could even, God forbid, approach the Spanish flu pandemic, which actually in 1918 killed more people around the world than World War I. So right now, the estimation, I believe, is a death rate of 2 to 3%. Now, it actually might be much lower if there's a lot of healthy people that even unintentionally the Chinese are missing. missing. This is what we saw with H1N1 in Mexico. The CDC in the U.S. got reports of a lot of dead people in Mexico, but they did not know how many people were sick who had not gone to doctors or hospitals. Right now, we are hearing 2 to 3%. On the one hand, it makes it far less deadly than 2 other deadly coronavirus outbreaks in the last 20 years, SARS, 2003, and MERS, which is just a few years ago. But this is spreading much more than MERS and a little bit more already than SARS. So it seems to be spreading more. It seems to be a little bit less under control. So 2 to 3% is, by the way, the same estimated death rate as the Spanish flu pandemic. But hopefully that's an overestimation, because the Chinese might unintentionally be missing healthy but very, very mild cases. But the flip side of this is that those people could infect people and be carriers while they have mild cases.
All right, so this is good. Michael, you're making me worried. Dennis, you're kind of making me relax a little bit. I like that. Though I do want to point this out. We had a flight carrying 200 Americans out of Wuhan, including a lot of State Department employees, landed in Alaska. They were screened. I think they found no one exhibiting symptoms. They now flew them they were flown to March Air Force Base in California, and they've all been let out into the general population. But given a phone number, really, let's stay in touch, because just because you're not exhibiting symptoms now, it could develop in the future. Are you, even with your chillaxed attitude, does that concern you at all?
Yeah, it doesn't really. I mean,
some of them just came from the ground zero of this.
Right. And in China, they never would have been allowed to leave or to land. And I kind of wish that they'd been willing to be put up in a nice hotel for 2 weeks, and let's watch them closely. I think they ought to kind of watch that pretty carefully. But I just want to emphasize, in this country, 64,000 people lost their lives to opioids, okay? I don't think a virus killing a few hundred. SARS, a decade to 2 decades ago, killed 800, and yet all of the media coverage. Let's just kind of... And we worry about the swine flu 1918. We don't think that science and virus hunters and technology are vastly better and they can get out in front of this and stop.
They're still slow, and the vaccine they're talking about 3 months away from even clinical trials. And you're right. I mean, look, we have all these problems, these epidemics, the opioid situation. And that troubles me, but we have that anyway. These would be deaths in addition to the ones we already have. And I mean, the origins, Michael, the origins are disturbing. I'm not one to hype things, but this is something, quite frankly, people are talking about more than impeachment.
Well, I mean, complacency with something like this is dangerous. So I'm hoping that we're not going to see a death toll much greater than what we saw with SARS in 2003. And we're already sort of reaching that. I'm hoping it won't be any higher. And I agree that right now it's insignificant compared to all kinds of things we see every year, including seasonal flu. But what I'm afraid will happen is that I hope that not many more people will die, but then I'm afraid that people will go, oh, it's just the media hyping it, and eventually we're hit by something like Spanish flu pandemic, and there is no guarantee that our science could provide answers fast enough right now, current state of science. With H1N1, we were mostly just lucky because there were a few people who were young and healthy who they had to put on heart bypass machines for H1N1. Some of them lived and some of them died. And the only thing that saved us from major death toll is it hit far less people than the CDC originally feared. And basically, that's a fluke, thank God, miracle of the genetics of H1N1. So we just don't know. It is not true that we have some silver bullet, or especially since, by the way, we have more experience right now with influenza vaccines, which are far...
Got to go to the commercial. I don't think they have to do that in China, by the way. And I think you're both right. Michael Szanto, thank you very much. Great information and great perspective from you, Mr. Neal. Thank you very much.